Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another exciting session of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. My name is Joe Grabowski, and for those who don't know, we're all about bringing science, adventure, and conservation into classrooms across North America and beyond. And I'm very excited to welcome our guest today, James Ketchell. James is a veteran of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. He did a great session for us in September, and actually I've had the pleasure of having him join my class on a few occasions. He joined my grade 8s last year. So James is an explorer, adventurer, guest speaker, all-around great guy, and I'm not going to give away any of his exploits so far. He's going to share some awesome PowerPoints with you and then tell you about his new adventure he's just about to embark on. So James, it's great to have you joining us today.
Hey, well, Joe, thank you for having me, and hello to all of you guys out there. I hope that you're having a good day, and it's very exciting to speak to you all. So basically what I'm going to do is first of all share the screen so you can see what we're looking at. Here we go. Okay, guys, right. So I'm going to take you guys on a little bit of an adventure and tell you guys a little bit of a story. But in order to do that, I need to turn the clocks back 7 years. 7 years, which might sound crazy, but 7 years ago, I had quite a nasty motorcycle accident. I used to ride bikes most weekends and raced, actually. And this is a Kawasaki ZX6 Ninja. So it's quite a fast bike. It would max out at 173 miles per hour. But the problem that I had, I was quite competitive. So I didn't really like losing. And the problem that you have when you're on two wheels, you're either winning or you crash trying. And unfortunately, I used to crash quite a bit. But it's okay because you wear this leather suit here that I'm in, that green leather suit. And the idea is when you slide along the tarmac, it stops you from losing all your skin, which is obviously very useful. But there was one particular time I was accelerating hard out of the corner and I lost traction, so the rear wheel span up, so the back of the bike came round on me and it threw me over the handlebars at just over 100 miles an hour. Now, unfortunately, when the human body hits concrete at 100 miles an hour, it can be problematic. And I remember just flying through the air, looking back at the bike, and I thought to myself, oh dear, this is going to hurt. And the next thing I know, I hit the deck hard and I was knocked out. And I remember waking up at the side of the track, and all of a sudden, I had this really intense pain running down through my right leg, and a doctor came running over to me, and the first thing he said was, whatever you do, don't look down. Now, what do you do when you're told not to do something? You do it. So I looked down, and instead of my right foot pointing forwards, I'd snapped my ankle, and it was 180 degrees behind me. And when I looked at it, it just felt that little bit more painful. But I was quite pleased because I still had a sense of humor in the face of adversity. That morning I'd put a white sock on, and the doctor, he slid the boot off my ankle, off my foot, and I had an open fracture, so the skin had split and the bone had come through, so my white sock was now dripping red with blood. And I said to the guy, wouldn't this make a great photo? I said, have you got a camera? And he said to me, stop being such a silly boy. And I said, okay, I'm really sorry. And then the next thing I know, they started injecting morphine into me. And this morphine was crazy. It was a drug that just took the pain away, but it took me into a different world. I just lost the ability to think and even talk. The next thing I know, I woke up in hospital. And I hadn't just broken and snapped my ankle, I'd broken my legs and I'd broken my arm and my hand. So I found myself literally in an almost body cast. I couldn't do a thing. I had to have a nurse wash me. So I guess it wasn't all bad in some senses. But I had to figure out how I was going to try and turn something negative into something positive. And I've always had this goal to try and row a boat across the Atlantic Ocean, but I've never really had the guts to do it. And I remember lying there and the doctor saying to me, James, you've had a serious accident. It's likely that you're not going to be able to walk properly again. And I thought, well, I can sit here and just cry my eyes out feeling sorry for myself, or I can do something about it. So I decided to set myself a goal of rowing across the Atlantic. And I made it happen in 2010. I know that doesn't look like me. My hair goes blonde in the sun and my beard goes ginger, but we all know that ginger is cool. And that's actually Antigua in the background in the Caribbean. So I rode from a little island called La Gomera in the Canary Islands to Antigua in the Caribbean. It's the traditional mid-transatlantic route. It's the same route that Christopher Columbus used back in the 14th century or 15th century. You do this type of thing as a 2-man or a 4 or sometimes a 6 or an 8-man, and I have no idea why no one would join me. So I decided to do it on my own. It was the best decision I ever made. It's a little bit of video footage here from the Atlantic. And I hope this doesn't make you seasick and vomit up your lunch everywhere. And you can see it's very much a standard day. And the waves and the wind are just pushing me along. And I used to row like this for 12 hours a day. And it's amazing how you get used to it after a while. But so many people used to say to me, it must have been so boring in the middle of the Atlantic. All you've got is this vast blue ocean and the sky, which is true. You do have a vast blue ocean and a beautiful sky. But every day the sun would come up and the water would glisten in a different way. And the wildlife was just unbelievable. Huge fin whales would swim right up to the side of the boat. And they would look me in the eye, and that's something that you'll never ever experience without being out in an ocean. It was absolutely incredible. But I had this mindset that if I did one thing, and that one thing was to just keep going, by default I would get to land. It may not be where I want to be, but I would get to land. And I did that one thing, and I managed to make it into English Harbour in Antigua. Here you can see me coming in. One of the things that was absolutely fascinating about the Atlantic was some of the wildlife. You know, I've mentioned oceanic, the fin whales, but the oceanic white-tipped sharks were absolutely incredible. They used to swim around the side of the boat, and they would never get that close to the boat. And I wanted to try and film them, so I'd throw food in to get them to come closer, but they would never come that close. And I had this theory that I could just jump in, and they would just swim off. But I decided to not try that. Now, one of the things that I'm commonly asked is, what was the most dangerous part about being in the Atlantic? Was it the huge waves, which are as high as a 2- or 3-story building, or at times, was it the sharks? What was it? But actually, the most dangerous thing about being out in the Atlantic was actually other human beings. I was almost hit by a 300-meter oil tanker. I didn't actually see it coming. It came out of nowhere from behind me, and it almost run me over. So the most dangerous thing about being out in the Atlantic is actually other human beings. Now, I don't know if you guys can remember, but back in 2010, this was, in April, there was a massive volcano that erupted in Iceland, chucked a huge ash cloud up into the sky. Now, that ash cloud grounded flights all the way around the world. So my parents couldn't fly into Antigua to see me. I couldn't fly out. And it was like being stuck on the island, but it was quite crazy because it happened to be Antigua Race Week, which is when all these rich individuals get together and they sail their yachts around the island. And the word got out that this lunatic from Britain, who'd spent almost 4 months in the Atlantic on his own, it took 110 days, 4 hours and 4 minutes to get across, was about to row in. And the kindness and the generosity that was bestowed on me, I will never ever forget. It was like being a celebrity for a day. Guys were coming up to me saying, "Excuse me, sir, can my wife have a photo with you?" Doesn't happen anymore for some reason, but it was very interesting at the time. Now, if you keep watching this, guys, you're going to see I'm about to take the last stroke of a 3,000-mile road. And if you watch closely on the gate, you'll see what happens as I take the last stroke. See, right now, guys, if you watch this, this is the last stroke of a 3,000-mile row. So the gate that holds the oar in place snapped. I couldn't believe it. And if you keep watching, guys, something quite funny happens. Champagne in the face is very, very painful, especially when it starts going in your eyes. You're much better off drinking it, if you're old enough, of course. But I'm a true believer that when you push yourself outside of your comfort zone, doors of opportunity just naturally open. And I'd worked hard to get across the Atlantic. And it was funny because I met someone who was also rowing the Atlantic at a very similar time, but he was obviously doing it in a different boat. And we just became good friends, and we helped each other. And I remember he said to me before the road, he said, "James, after the road, do you fancy going out to Everest with me?" And I thought, I don't know, I've climbed before, but not to that level. So I thought, well, I need to concentrate on the task at hand here and just get across the Atlantic. And I remember I managed to get across, and the phone rang when I got home. And it was my friend Rob, and he said to me, "James, are you coming out to Everest or what?" And my instant reaction was just to say, "Yeah, I'm in." So I said, "Yeah, I'm in." And then he said, "Great, you've got 6 months to find £30,000. And I just thought, I have no idea how I'm going to do that, because raising sponsorship, getting to the start line, is by far the hardest part. But I thought back to that concept that I used to get me across the Atlantic, and that is, if you just keep going, and as long as you don't row in circles, as long as I didn't row in circles, by default I would get to land. And I just kept going. I didn't do anything special. So I thought to myself, if I take that concept and I apply that to trying to get funding to get out to Everest, surely someone is going to sponsor me. Surely someone can make this happen. And I did that one thing and sent hundreds, thousands of emails out and made thousands of phone calls. And I got lucky. I got the sponsorship to get out there. That whole concept of just keep going never failed me. So this is a bit of a breakdown as to how we go about climbing Everest. You've got base camp at the bottom, then you've got camp 1, camp 2, camp 3, camp 4, and then you've got the top, so you've got the summit. But it's not a simple case of just rocking up and making your way up through the camps. You've got to go through a process of acclimatization climb. So you go up, you come back down, you go up to camp 1, you come down, then you go up to camp 2, then you come back down, and we're doing that to gradually give ourselves and our bodies an opportunity to build up to the lower levels of oxygen as we go higher. So the most dangerous part of Everest is the icefall, and this is going through the icefall. It's this huge area of ice that's just moving and shifting and cracking all the time, and it opens up these huge crevasses, and we need to cross these on ladders like this. But it's a long way down, as you can see. If you fall off there, you've got a big problem. And some of the ladders get quite long, like this one here. So this ladder's probably the length of your classroom, I would imagine. And it's 6 or 7 ladders. I think it's 6 ladders lashed together, covering this huge expanse. So I'll show you a video when I cross this. And if you look here, you'll see. Now if you look carefully, you can see the way the ladder is moving up and down, almost like a trampoline, and it's buckling and twisting from side to side. Now what you can't see in the photo, or in the frame here, is there's about 25 Sherpas all just sat here watching me. And you know, everyone's eyes are on me, and I had real butterflies in my stomach going across this. When I looked down, I couldn't see the bottom.
Sure you're okay with this?
So looking down was obviously not a very good idea. So again, I did that one thing. I just look where I want to go, and I just put one foot in front of the other, and I just keep going, and it got me to the other side. But you're going to see in a second, just my luck, my boot gets caught in the ladder, and I get stuck. So now I'm stuck, and I have to make sure that I don't panic, so I just stay calm, and I manage to wriggle my foot free. It looks much easier than it is in real life. So this is heading up to Camp 2, but this part's quite flat and quite easy. But one of the things I noticed as I was going higher, the atmosphere gets a lot thinner. So the sun is incredibly dangerous. The sun's rays are coming down on you, and they reflect up off the snow and the ice. So it's like having a sun below you. So the inside of your nostrils get burnt, and it's really quite a savage environment. So as you can see, this is what I looked like after I'd summited Everest. You can see it was a combination of the sun and the wind had just battered my face. Thankfully, I don't look like that anymore. So this is going up a little bit higher now. This is Camp 4. So we're above 8,000 meters now. And we've got the oxygen cylinders on the bottom left here. And we're in what's called the death zone. So our bodies are no longer acclimatizing. We're slowly dying. So I have to breathe with oxygen, and the oxygen's coming up through the red tube here, and it's just a trickle feed of oxygen into the mask, and it just tops up the air that I'm breathing, just makes things a little bit easier for me. So here's a little bit of video footage that I shot approaching this, the Hillary Step. So 63 years ago, Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay famously walked in these very footsteps. And you can see the very thin ridgeline that I'm walking along. It's probably the width of your chair, and it's just a sheer drop to the left. And guys, we're now looking up at the Hillary Step. This is the last piece of technical climbing before we get to the top. This is what it's like, guys, to stand on top of the world. If you was all to stand on top of the world now, this is what it would look like. So we're looking south now, out over Nepal. India would be in the distance. And the horizon is it's almost 200 miles away. So it's a long way. And we can just make out the curvature of the Earth. Now the camera's panning round to the north now, covering this area of cloud cover. And it's called the Tibetan Plateau. So that's Makalu, the 5th highest mountain in the world that you can see there. This is my favourite photo. I took this on the summit of Everest. You wouldn't really know it's me. I look like Darth Vader out of Star Wars, but just to prove it's me, there you go, the ginger beard comes back and I look very old and very tired. But it was at this point that things started going wrong for me. I had a severe lung infection, but I didn't realize it. It was the adrenaline and it was the excitement that was just carrying me to the top. And when I got to the top and realized that I was, in fact, only halfway, I still had to get back down, this lung infection just took hold of me and I lost the ability to breathe. Now, thankfully, I was able to get back down due to my Sherpa Dorji, who helped me. I managed to get back down, but I was still very, very sick. And I think it took about 5 days to get from the summit back to base camp. And I managed to get back home to the UK, and I remember walking through the airport, and I couldn't even breathe, pushing a trolley with all my luggage on it. And I saw my mum in the distance because she came to meet me. And she looked at me, and the first thing she said was, "James, you look like a druggie." And I said, "It's great to see you too." But I'd lost so much weight. I was so gaunt in the face and so out of breath, just pushing a trolley with luggage on. I looked terrible. So we went to the doctors, and the doctors, the same day that I got back, and the doctor said, "Listen, you need to go to the hospital right now. You're very ill." So I said, okay. So I went to the hospital, and the doctor, he x-rayed my chest, and I'll never forget this. He put the x-ray up in front of me on a whiteboard, And he said, "Oh, Mr. Ketchell, you see all these spots here? Well, I can tell you that you have a severe lung infection. You're really quite lucky to be alive, let alone the fact that you've just got back from Everest." And so I said to him, "Great, give me some antibiotics and I'll go home." And he said, "Well, it's not as simple as that. We need to pump the antibiotics around your body, so you're going to have to stay in hospital. If this lung infection takes hold of you anymore, it could kill you." So the day I got back from Everest was the day that I then spent a week in hospital. And it was almost like a feeling of deja vu, having been there before with the motorcycle accident. And I was lying in hospital, and I just thought to myself, wouldn't it be a great idea to cycle around the world? So that's what I decided to do. And on the 30th of June 2013, I set off from London, from Greenwich Park. My route took me down all the way through northern France, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, Czech Republic, Poland, Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, into Iran, Pakistan, and finally into India. This is the famous Taj Mahal, one of the 7 wonders of the world. I wanted to take my bike in here, but they wouldn't let me, sadly. This is the bike that I used, and there's quite a story to this bike. This bike is a second-hand bike. I wanted to prove to people that you don't have to have the biggest, the best, the most expensive of everything to go away and do something cool. So I cycled the world on this second-hand bike, and I still have it now. And that was all my luggage for half a year packed into those small bags. And that's how I was able to get around the world in 6 months, which was just over 100 miles a day. Now, you need to eat big when you're unsupported and cycling over 100 miles a day. So I didn't have anyone in the car coming up to me, giving me food. I had to find my food. Now, thankfully, when I cycled across America, that was no problem at all. I had some great meals out there, as you can see, like this one here. And I actually won an eating competition the day that I consumed all of this food. And the waiter couldn't believe where I was putting all this food. And I said, well, I'm cycling around the world, that's why. And I was burning close to 7,000 calories a day. That's how I was able to eat so much. And then basically after America, I think that took me over to, I cycled from India across through Asia, out across Australia, and then from Australia I flew to San Francisco, came down to San Diego. From San Diego I flew across to Miami, and then from Miami cycled back up to London, and I crossed the finish line where I started 6 months earlier on the 1st of February 2014. And when I crossed that finish line, there's about 8 billion people on the planet. I became the first and only person that's rode an ocean, summited Everest, and cycled around the world. Now, it was only a combination of 3 things, but it was 3 things that were quite special to me. And I remember looking back at the time the doctor said to me, James, you've really damaged yourself. You're probably not going to be able to do the things that you would like to do anymore. And when someone tells you you can't do something, if you want it enough, there is nothing you can't do. Nothing. As long as you're prepared to do that one thing, and that one thing is just to keep going and never ever give up. And one thing to remember, always treat people in a way that you would like to be treated. You'll be amazed at the things that come your way. Now, something quite special came my way. I gave a talk at a scout group, and the scout came up to me and said, James, I want to row across the Indian Ocean. And I said, I think that's a great idea. And he said, I want to do it with you. And I said, oh, right, okay, well, I'm about to cycle around the world, but maybe when I get back, we can do it. Now, remember one thing, guys. Actions speak louder than words. This guy, he didn't go off telling everyone. He just went quietly off, started building a website, started trying to obtain funding, and he was displaying the actions of someone that really wanted something. Everyone can talk about doing something, but actually doing it is totally different. And I found out a little bit more about this guy. His name was Ash, and he had epilepsy, and ever since he was a young boy, he's always struggled with his epilepsy. People telling him, you can't do this, you can't do that. And when he was 19 years old, he had Hodgkin's lymphoma. So he almost died of cancer. It was his third round of chemo that luckily saved him. And it just felt right that we were going to try and row across the Indian Ocean together. So we rowed from a little island, well, not a little island, we rowed from Australia, from a place called Geraldton to Mauritius. But we had a little bit of bad luck, and sometimes things don't always go to plan. We were almost 10 days out from Geraldton, and the boat, we got caught in some bad weather, and the boat rolled over. So you imagine waves as high as your building, or your 2 or 3 story building. Ash was in the cabin, and he was thrown up into the air, and unfortunately he hit his head, and it knocked him straight out, and it meant that we had to be rescued. And unfortunately we were rescued. I'll show you guys some video footage of the rescue.
One of 2 British rowers rescued twice of WA isn't ruling out another attempt to row from Geraldton to Mauritius. The man and his partner were pulled from heavy seas 11 days ago and taken to safety by a ship.
A painstaking climb to safety. In rough seas, James Ketchell and Ashley Wilson make it to the top of a 100,000-tonne oil tanker. Ashley had a head injury. Immediately medically assessed, his first request, fruit juice.
Orange juice leke aao, orange juice. Orange juice aur pani ka bottle.
Able to crack a smile now, hours earlier, a 6-metre swell struck the rower's boat, rolling it.
You don't really know what's going on. Things start spinning very quickly. Whilst we were inside, Ash hit his head quite hard, and unfortunately we then had a medical issue on board, and at that point I had to put safety first.
A distress signal went out immediately, but it was 2 hours before Dubai Charm made it to them.
It's something I will never ever forget. We could see it coming as it got closer, and it's really quite an intimidating feeling when you see this huge ship just coming straight towards you.
The rowers are professional adventurers. Their trip from Geraldton to Mauritius across the Indian Ocean, a bid to break a world record and raise money for epilepsy research, a condition Ashley suffers from. This was their second failed attempt.
It was disappointing, but I think we've got to look at this in the bigger picture. We've raised a huge amount of awareness and funds for our charities, and we've escaped with able to tell the tale.
And it seems their latest dramatic ocean trip may not be their last.
Are we going to try again for a 3rd time? I would say that you never know what's around the corner. Watch this space.
You can donate to epilepsy research at www.nothingsimpossible.co.uk. Alice Pooley, 9 News.
Okay, so that was just an example that sometimes things don't always go to plan. But it's okay, and as long as you don't give up and you always keep going, that's all that matters. So this is my project that I'm working on now. As I speak to you guys, I'm out in the Canary Islands, on Gran Canaria, the island. And this boat here is a pedalo. So I'm pedaling 3,000 miles across the Atlantic, the exact same route that I rode 6 years ago. And it should be a pretty interesting project. I think we're going to get across, hopefully, this boat is much faster than the rowing boat, so I think we should be able to get across in about 30 to 40 days. Now, the interesting thing here is, guys, you guys can follow us at our website, which is www.pedaltheocean.co.uk, and you can see exactly how far we've gone, how far we've got to go, send us messages. And for those of you that are on Twitter, you can follow at Captain Ketch and enjoy the journey. But guys, I just wanted to say thanks ever so much for having me, and hope that you've had an interesting half an hour. And if anyone would like to ask me any questions, you can fire away.
Okay, well, James, thanks so much for sharing your story. It really is an inspirational one, and I just can't imagine how excited you are right now, so close to launching out on another adventure.
Yeah, very, very excited. Just looking forward to getting out there, really. Everything is prepped. And one of the things that is really important, and it doesn't matter what you do, if you apply it to everything you do in life, is preparation. The more prep you spend, the more time you spend working on something, the better the end goal will be. So I've deliberately been out here setting everything up and just getting everything ready, getting all the food packed into the boat, and making sure that we're good to go.
All right. Well, let me introduce our classes joining us, then we'll start grabbing some questions. So we have Mrs. Dwarf's grade 8 from Taylorville in Illinois. We've got Mrs. Kendall's grade. Actually, we don't have Mrs. Kendall's. It was set up by Mrs. Kendall. Mrs. Howell's grade 6s from Austin, Texas. And then Mrs. Golchinsky and Mrs. Walbrun's classrooms from Watoma, Wisconsin are joining us. Plus, we have my grade 6-7s joining us today as well in Guelph, Ontario, so from Canada.
Cool.
Let's go with Mrs. Golchinsky's group. Your microphone is on. We have a couple questions for James. Okay, we can't hear you guys. Your microphone is on my end. I'm going to move to our class in Illinois, but if you just want to check on the computer and see if maybe your microphone was turned off on your end. Otherwise, you can type your questions into the blue chat sidebar. So on the left side of the screen, there's a blue icon. You can type your questions right in if we can't get the microphone going. Illinois, your microphone's on, grade 8.
Okay, thank you. We've got a couple of questions for you. Okay, go ahead.
Where did you cycle in the U.S.?
Okay, that's a great question. Where did I cycle in the US? So I flew in to San Francisco and I cycled all the way down Highway 1, which is a highway that hugs the coast of the Pacific Ocean. It's probably one of the most incredible roads that you could ever cycle, down to San Diego, then out through California, into Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, and Florida. And then I finished in Miami. That was my route in America.
Thank you. We have another question. They're in line.
Okay.
In what countries in Europe, more specifically, did you visit while cycling?
Could you just repeat that, if you don't mind? I didn't quite hear you.
What countries in Europe, more specifically, did you visit while cycling?
What countries in Europe did I visit when I was cycling? So I visited northern France, and Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, Czech Republic, Poland, Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, and Turkey. Those were all of the European countries that I cycled through, and they were great. Everyone was so friendly to me.
Okay, we have a couple more questions, if that's okay.
You can ask as many as you like.
When you're crossing the Atlantic Ocean, how much confidence do you have in yourself?
When I crossed the Atlantic Ocean, how much confidence did I have in myself? Before I crossed, I was quite anxious. I was quite nervous, but I made sure I did all my preparation. And when you start something that you've not done before, you are always going to be a little bit nervous. That's just normal. But the best thing you can ever do is put yourself in the best position to undertake whatever it is you're going to do. So you do all your training, you get yourself physically fit, you get yourself prepared so you know and understand the boat. You do all that you can do to prepare for something. And as long as you do that, you'll probably always end up being okay. So before I was quite nervous, but I made sure I did all my prep. And then once I got out there, I realized that it wasn't too bad. And all the hard work and effort and the preparation that I've been doing really paid off.
Okay, grade 8s. We'll probably swing back for a couple more questions, but I'm going to visit our class from Austin, Texas. Mrs. Howell's grade 6s. Your microphone's on.
Hello.
How many days did it take to hike to the top of Everest?
How many days did it take to hike to the top of Everest? The honest answer off the top of my head is I don't know, but I was away for about 6 weeks. So however many days are in 6 weeks is the answer. Any other questions, guys?
When you were cycling the world, did you go through Texas?
Yes, I did pass through Texas when I was cycling, and I spent some time in Austin, and the cycling is brilliant there. I have been to Austin twice, and I have been to Dallas, I have been to Del Rio, I have been to El Paso, I've been to Houston. I've seen an awful lot of Texas, actually. It's a great place, and everyone was very friendly.
Oh, sorry. If you ever had a chance to do any of those again, would you?
Yeah, that's great. If I had the chance to do any one of those again, would I do it again? Yeah, I would cycle around the world again. That was a lot of fun. I wouldn't climb Everest again. It was just way too hard. And I'm about to cross the Atlantic again anyway. So, yeah, I would.
All right, great questions. We'll swing back, but let me check our first class from Wisconsin, Mrs. Golchinski's group. Let's see if their mic's working. Your mic's turned on my end. Mrs. Golchinski's group and Mrs. Walburn's, we're going to try again for some questions if you want to come up. But I don't hear you, so maybe we're still having the mic problems. But I do see typing coming. Here we go. James, they're typing their questions. The first one is, what inspired you to travel across the Atlantic?
Yeah, that is a great question. What inspired me to travel across the Atlantic? It's when I was younger, I've always been into adventure and things, but I never really had the guts to do it. And it was having the motorcycle accident that spurred me on, that gave me a reason to do it. I wanted to focus on getting better and walking again. I was in a wheelchair for half a year. So the prospect of rowing across the Atlantic was what motivated me to make a recovery. And then once you do one thing, you meet other like-minded people, and doors of opportunity just naturally open. So that was, and also, I suppose, to answer the question of what inspired me to row across the Atlantic was reading about other adventurers, people like Christopher Columbus and all the famous explorers.
Okay, let's visit our grade 8s in Illinois.
We've got some more questions. They're coming. We're all.
As you.
Camera.
Right there. Whenever you were going up Mount Everest, did you were you thinking about what might happen? Were you scared about something as you kept going up?
Yeah, so I was quite scared going up Everest, but I broke it down into sections. I never ever looked or thought about getting to the summit, and my goal was just to get to the end of each day. And as Everest is made up of different camps, my focus was just to get to the different camps. And also I had support. I was with other people as well.
Okay, James, I have another question that came in from our class from Wisconsin. They're wondering if you can talk about the charities that you're working with this time around.
Oh, yes, yes. So I have always worked with charities. I have found out when I had the motorcycle accident, I found out what it was like to not be able to get around so well. So I now do a lot of work for charities that look after disabled children, and when I rowed across the Atlantic, I raised money for a children's charity here in the UK, and also when I cycled around the world and climbed Everest. But this charity for crossing the Atlantic in a pedalo is for a wonderful, wonderful charity called Naomi House. And Naomi House is a hospice, and they help children and families that have terminally ill children or members of their family. And so they give them the support and the care. And remember one thing, guys, it's very important. In life, it's not about what you have. It's about what you do for other people. And I get a great deal of enjoyment out of raising awareness and money to help other people.
Awesome. Very important to think about that too. Adventure for a purpose, not just for the sake of adventure. That's awesome. Mrs. Howell's grade 6s, do you guys have a couple more questions from Texas?
No, we just wanted to say thank you so much, and we really enjoyed it.
No worries. Thank you for having me, guys, and I hope you have a really good day.
Thank you. Thank you. You too.
Okay, well, James, thank you so much for today. I'm just noticing that the period is ending in a couple classes. The grade 8s had to go, and it looks like the grade 6s period's ending as well. So I will just say that we are going to try and do a satellite call from the Atlantic. So we will broadcast that over Google Hangouts as well. So hopefully we can get some more classrooms joining us and taking part. And yeah, other than that, good luck this weekend with your preparations. I know your partner's arriving on Sunday, and then you'll be off on the Atlantic in maybe Monday, looks like.
Yeah, we will be. Yes, yes. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to turn the mics on so you guys can say goodbye and thank you. So the mics are on. James, thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, guys. Have a good day.
All right, James, thanks so much. Have a good rest, and we'll talk soon.
Okay.